Hello and welcome to Studio Sundays. It's your host, Gianna Andrews. This week's conversation that I had with our spotlight guest was super interesting. Jackie Collins started her career as a professional dancer, and she now runs one of the most reputable artist agencies in the US. She works with artists all over the globe, and it was just really fascinating to get a behind the scenes view on what her daily life looks like. She has a love for both New York City and Los Angeles, and it was fascinating to hear the role she plays between facilitating relationships with brands and professional artists. I sure learned a lot from this conversation, and it was just really inspiring to talk with such a successful entrepreneur and businesswoman. I think you'll really enjoy it, so let's dive in. Okay, well, thank you so much for taking the time to meet with me today. I really appreciate it.
No worries. Happy to be here.
Yeah. Okay, well, first, I'm just going to give you a quick rundown of the podcast, what I'm doing here, and then we'll just dive right in to the questions for you. So, my name's Gianna. I'm a full-time artist. I started my career basically by I had this really horrible injury. I broke my back, and it opened up space and time in my life to create. And so I just started like posting on social media, my story, my art, and just by sharing my story is kind of how I got to where I am today. I started writing a weekly newsletter called Studio Sundays, and I've been doing that for the past year. And then it sort of felt like it was time to maybe bring in some other voices because I know my audience is full of artists, creatives, entrepreneurs, and it's been really fun. And I've really enjoyed interviewing other people, and I benefit from it. I think my audience does as well. And then it just naturally kind of blossomed into like, wow, we need to record these conversations because they're really great. And just like the transcript isn't quite giving it what it needs or deserves. So that's how we got to where we are today.
I love that. I feel that attention span wise, it's really nice to have things that people can listen to because I think some people struggle with reading or some people are commuting and it's easy to have something to listen to. And I think this platform is really valuable.
Awesome. Okay, well, let's just like start out by kind of talking about what does a typical day in your life look like? You're a businesswoman, you are running Fillin Global and working with artists, you're traveling all across the country. What does like a normal day look like for you in your life?
Okay, so the one thing I really do love about what I do is that no day is the same. The one consistent factor is that my dog wakes me up at around 7 o'clock. It's like she has an internal alarm. So I usually don't set an actual alarm.
Your dog's
And
so cute, by the way. I saw her on Instagram. I was like, oh my
yes.
gosh.
So I also have a daughter and she is a teenager now, so she can wake up herself, but and she doesn't let me take her picture, so there's more dog content on the Instagram than child. And then generally I'm walking a dog, making coffee, and I am somebody that often jumps into work possibly right away. I'm looking at emails that might have come in late at night, emails that could have come in from the UK, because they would land in my inbox early. And I might just go ahead and answer them just to clear my plate to, alleviate when I sit down at my desk. A few times a week, I take Pilates from 9 to 10, and that is an amazing time where I put my phone away and I don't read any emails and I get that space to ground myself and start my day. And I would say out of the 5 days a week, maybe I'm home 2 of them. And the other 3, I'm generally going into the city, meeting with my team, and we often have breakfast, lunches, coffees with potential clients, potential artists. And that's what makes it different and exciting.
Yeah.
And then in terms of like projects that we're working on, they can span from anything to, a new inquiry for an illustration for a magazine to a company that wants us to cover, 12 floors with murals. So every project is different. Every project is exciting. And, my day consists of half, maybe being on a Zoom, about an existing project. Then maybe we're speaking to an artist that might want representation later in the day, so that, it keeps things fresh and different.
I feel like that's maybe the best part about kind of running the show or running your own business is that it is dynamic. And so you get to be involved in lots of different facets.
Yes. And then listen, there's also like arduous things like meeting with our accountant
Mhm.
and,
Tax season.
yeah, discussing our insurance policy. So those are the other things that, the responsibility lies on the business owner as well.
You co-founded Fillin Global several years ago, back in 2015, I believe. What was the vision like behind that, and how did you decide to found your own artist agency? I think I saw that you were maybe working for an artist agency prior to founding Fillin.
Yeah. So my business partner of about a decade, Tommy Feinstein, and I were working together representing photographers in the industry. So we were already interfacing with, brands, advertising agencies. And at the time, we only had photographers to show, and we realized that the industry was moving in a lot of different directions, that people were starting to really respect like the art of murals and street art and combining street art with brands. And Tommy had a background in actual street art. He will tell you he was a bad kid. And I had a lot of friends that were illustrators and creative artists. And we just said, why don't we start this new company and expand our offerings? And then we sort of have something more exciting to bring to the table. And I'm pretty happy to say that I think, as far as like a visionary, look ahead, the amount of artists used in collaboration with brands has only increased in the last 10 years. So obviously the company started off slow and we were like still getting the word out there, and maybe we had a collective of under 20 artists, and now we have 60 plus in various different styles, because there really are so many opportunities out there.
Mhm.
And we're growing. Artists reach out to us all the time. We are, kind of particular about who we add because we don't want to outgrow ourselves, but also we feel that we like to balance out the styles across the roster. But that's how we started. And, we've had also a lot of different navigating on how we operate through the inception and pandemic and post-pandemic.
A lot has changed in the last 9 years, like rapidly. So I'm sure that's something to always navigate. And why do you think it is that brands now are working with artists more than ever before?
Well, I think one factor is definitely money. I know firsthand that if you are a brand, let's just say Coca-Cola, and you want to produce a photo shoot with 3 people, 2 dogs, and an elaborate set behind you, that can cost anywhere from $300,000 to $600,000. But if you want to pivot and say, hey, let's do an illustration campaign, you're talking about one artist behind a tablet, screen, computer, and then, obviously their creative fee and usage, and that would be much less.
Yeah.
So I think that part of it is budgets. And then also part of it is just being innovative, like getting people's attention, and then the increase in like TikTok and Instagram and social media and websites, like just having something like flashy and creative and potentially, changing. Illustration and art is easier to work with than like just constantly doing photography.
Right. Yeah. And it seems like, too, as brands brands are basically needing social media in order to spread their message, their branding, and kind of stay relevant in this day and age. Having that single artist to collaborate with might add to their storytelling and personality, and also like relatability of the brand, potentially more than like a
Yeah, and
fashionable. Yeah.
I think more so than a photographer, like artists have social media followings themselves. And then you're right, like the artist has a personality and a persona and their own audience. So like, you know, maybe Coca-Cola has an audience, but then you're working with an artist, say on my roster, Jason Naylor, and like you have an insight into his like what colorful socks he's wearing in the morning and you know how his day unfolds. And it sort of like brings the attention to a different audience.
So you live in New York City right now, is that correct?
I do.
And have you always lived there?
I am born and raised just outside of New York City and have been living in New York City for over 20 years. So I think that makes me a true New Yorker.
I feel it.
I do spend a fair amount of time going out to Los Angeles. I hope to keep increasing the amount of time that I'm out there. In 2019, I went 6 or 7 times. And then obviously 2020, my suitcase was very sad and stayed in my closet for about 14, 16 months. And I really did appreciate that reset. But we just got back from visiting Los Angeles and it truly does like inspire me in a different way. And we have a fair amount of artists that are based there. So I really like to do FaceTime with them. And we're trying to increase our clients on the West Coast.
Yeah, that makes sense. So you're kind of going there. And also I feel like it's just such a different vibe of a city with the warm and the palm trees and it's a nice like balance to New York. I imagine right now it's pretty chilly there and
Yes, and
everything.
I truly do love both. I'm not team one or the other. I think they both have some really magical pros
Mhm.
uh, and cons.
Have you always been drawn to art or have you ever dabbled in creativity yourself?
So actually my background is as a performing artist. I grew up my entire life dancing and I was a professional dancer here in New York for 7 years. And I felt very fulfilled by it for 5 of the 7 years and spent the last 2 years feeling like there was something else I wanted to be doing. And usually my analogy is if I was sitting in the audience while they were doing, say, like a tech rehearsal, my brain was always thinking about like how it could run smoother and like what they should be doing differently. And I just think that like there's a part of me that has more of like a producer hat. And I knew I wanted to stay immersed in the arts, but I think that I wanted to be on the other side and I wanted to be able to be like, you know, working in a strategic way. I love to write. I wanted to have a job that incorporated writing. So I went to grad school at NYU and got my master's. And from there, my path has ranged from working as an executive director of a dance company to representing musicians that were scoring ballets and then commercials. And then that led me into representing photographers and then now artists.
Wow, that's so interesting. So you really had, yeah, you had your start in the creative field, which is kind of the origin, and then found your director hat, or so to speak, and then that led you to kind of helping other artists reach their full potential and dreams too, which is really a cool thing.
Yeah, and something that's really important to me now and in the future is to develop a way to mentor artists that are transitioning out of, say, performing and or let's I mean even just say if you're a visual artist and something happens to your hands and you can't, you know, and like helping those artists transition into other careers that can be equally fulfilling and maybe they don't know about like how to develop a CV and how to have a LinkedIn profile and like, you know,
Yeah.
sort of connecting them with opportunities to work on the other side of their performing or creative career.
Yeah, like a mentorship program or something. Because I know that specifically, I have a close friend that is a dancer, and it is the short time frame where your body can actually do those things. And then it's like, what's next
Yes,
after
I like
that?
to compare it to football players, and everyone's always feeling sorry for football players because they have to retire at 36, but they've been making millions of
Right.
dollars for a decade, so it's a little easier on them. And I don't think people realize that ballerinas, just as an example, sacrifice their entire lives and livelihood to devote, their time to this craft, and maybe their career ends in their mid 30s or sooner if they sustain an injury. And unfortunately, they don't make as much money as a football player, and they do need to have something else to fall back on. Many of them maybe didn't go to college. Many of them maybe haven't been networking in other industries. And I would love to bring all of my network, to them and help.
That would be amazing. So is that kind of a future project you're planning in with Fillin, or would that be like a separate mentorship program?
It's separate. I actually have a friend who was also a dancer with me who shares this goal, and we are planning on doing something together.
That would be awesome. I think that would really help a lot of people. I love that. So you're kind of constantly working with talent and looking at plenty of artists. What is the biggest mistake you see artists making right now?
That's an interesting question. Something that I feel could potentially be a mistake in terms of like once you're embedded in a project that we feel really strongly about at Fillin is if an artist is resistant to adapt to a creative direction. So let's just say you're working for a beauty packaging project and they give you a creative brief, and the artist, we will negotiate that there's 2 rounds of revisions. But let's just say maybe they're not hitting the mark and the client isn't happy. Like our job is like, we want to make a client happy. And if an artist resists and is like, well, that's not true to my style, and no, I won't, and pushes back too much, I feel that that's a mistake if you want to work commercially. If you just want to make fine art that you sell and you show, and it's not for, a brand or directed by someone, then all for, your creative vision 100%. But I think artists have to understand, and many of them come to us saying like, I want to work commercially, I want to work with brands, but then you have to adapt to the ask, like what they're asking for.
Yeah, you really have to like put your own ego and self aside to be like, let's just make sure the client is 100% happy and it's not about making yourself
Yes, and
necessarily
ego
one.
is a key word there. Yes.
Yeah, no, it's definitely difficult. And it probably takes a certain type of artist that can succeed in that type of role and industry.
And like the thing, we like to be involved as an in-between because we want to protect the artist's integrity as well. So we're always there for the artist, but we also work for the client. And then that's why we try to find that beautiful in-between where everybody stays happy.
What are qualities you are maybe not looking for in artists around the world, since you have to be highly selective on curating, Fillin, and your clientele?
Yeah, I mean, I often find that a lot of clients, when they come to us, like whether it's in the, brief of the description of what they need or in maybe their contract, like a lot of people will really be hesitant to work with an artist that is like very openly public politically,
Mm-hmm.
or like using profanity, which again, all for it if that's like your message, your fine art, but it generally doesn't lend itself very well to the commercial world. So we kind of take that into a factor, and we really like, we interview all of our artists on Zoom or in person because personality matters to us, because we want the process to be smooth. So if we do feel an artist potentially is very strong-willed or has, too much control over, the way their designs go, then we just know it's not going to work in the commercial world. Sometimes there's one decision maker, sometimes there's 7.
Mm-hmm.
So you really need to be somebody that can be easy to work with.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So are you connecting artists as well with like galleries, and are you representing the fine art side? Is it just focused on commercial?
So no, that is probably about 5% of our business is selling fine art or placing fine art. Like we have some relationships with some of these like, membership clubs in New York and Los Angeles that we might, place art to be hung. We have a few relationships with interior designers. We have been contacted by hotels. We've placed art in the background of a TV show, but that's a very small percentage of our business. We actually encourage our artists to all do that separately from us and, look for gallery representation and show their work and sell their work online. Our main focus is brand collaborations, indoor, outdoor murals, digital projects,
Yeah.
whether it's from a website, social media, or like major print campaign.
Interesting. And what do you love most about your job?
I think my favorite part of my job is literally like riding the subway and seeing an ad that we worked on.
Oh, that's cool.
Like, wow, that was us. Or watching a TV commercial, like we did a New York Lotto campaign and, sitting at home watching TV with my family and being like, hey, we did that.
Yeah, you really get to like see it out in the world, and that just must be such a fulfilling feeling to know that the hard work that went in behind the scenes, people are actually getting to enjoy it.
Yes. And then really like, I mean, I love facilitating relationships for artists and seeing them like, pleased with an outcome of a project or excited to work with a certain brand or, um, you know, just watching the project start from a little pencil sketch to, the final product is really fulfilling.
Yeah. And I feel like that's such an important role you facilitate as well, because with artists, I know it can just be hard. Like they don't always want to we don't always want to focus on the business side of things, and like negotiations and all of that can get really like overwhelming and almost stop people from wanting stop artists from wanting to pursue that commercial route or working with brands.
Yeah, when we first have conversations with the artist and we want to tell them like, well, this is what it's going to look like if you start working with us. And, my favorite story is to tell them we want to take a lot of that admin busy work off your plate, and that sometimes projects have an email chain of like 132 emails before the actual first design is submitted. So we are on those 132 emails and the artist doesn't need to be. Or,
That's nice.
for instance, like Jason Naylor is on a lift painting a wall that's 20 feet high. He doesn't want to be responding to DMs. He just writes to them like, here's Jackie, and then I get to alleviate that back and forth and like, discern if a project is right for an artist before they even have to spend much time on it.
You literally physically can't be creating art and doing the admin and responding to emails. So once an
And some
artist,
artists like it, and some artists really like to be very involved. And I usually tell them you have to relinquish a bit of control if you want to have an agent speak on your behalf. So you have to be comfortable with that. And I usually say if you don't think you're going to be, then maybe an agent isn't for you. But
yeah.
if you want nothing to do with vendor setup and emails back and forth and creating a timeline, then we are the agency for you because that's what we're good at and that's what we do all day long.
So what can we expect to see from you and Fillin in the next year, and what are you excited about working on?
So we are doing a very exciting project in this late spring, early summer with a fashion parent company here in New York. So I can't say much more, but that will be exciting because we will probably be able to tap into 10 or more existing fill-in artists. So I really love when multiple artists work on a project.
Mm.
We have another relationship with a gaming company called Level 99, and we have murals inside their um, spaces, and they're opening a new space and they will come to fill in for some of our artists, which is exciting. And I'm really hoping to have more animation and like movement projects this year. And
Interesting.
it feels like the ask is out there and that people are doing more animation. So I think that will be fun. And we just recently signed some very exciting artists, like a mural artist based in Spain whose work is phenomenal. And I just am excited to see what potential projects could come. I'd like to work with some more fashion or beauty brands that my daughter will then think that my job is cool.
We're always trying to impress them. Or is that Gen Z on the
I
edge?
think she's Gen Z.
Okay. Right on the edge of Gen Z. Yeah, that is a whole new breed that we are figuring out how to
Hard to
connect.
impress.
Very hard to impress. Well, it sounds like you're up to some really awesome things. It's been interesting just hearing about your job and how kind of you found your path. And thanks so much for sharing today about
One
everything.
more thing is I'd love to visit more cities and meet
Cities.
more artists. Yes.
Yeah. What do you have any top cities on your bucket list?
We are thinking about going to Minneapolis because there's a good
Mm.
amount of business there. And I know I need to go to San Francisco, but for some reason, I always seem to land in Los Angeles and never make it up that way, but we'd like to come up there as well.
It is a ways away. Like it's probably much faster to fly than
Yeah,
drive.
it's another flight. Yes.
All right. Well, best of luck with all of your future endeavors and projects. And it's been really nice to connect today.
Yes. Thank you for asking me.
For sure. All right. Have a great weekend.
You too. Bye,
Thank you.
Gianna.
Bye.